how do you get to a point where you don't care about what other people think anymore?
Yeah. So I think it's not I don't care about what people think in like a screw you kind of way, right? I think there's some people that are like, screw you, I don't care what you think. They're just assholes, okay? Like that's not what I'm talking about. What I mean is like just being authentic to myself, right? And what I realized was I was making all these decisions based on what other people thought. And it was like I had loyalty to other people that they didn't have to meet. And what was funny is that I think this hit home. I went through my divorce, right? And everybody hated me, right? And then like 6 months later, like nobody even remembered. And I was like, holy cow, I made all these decisions worried about what everybody else was thinking. And now nobody gives a rip. Like what other decisions am I making based on this? And nobody else is running your life. Like nobody else is going to get to the end. And people really don't give a rip. They're running their own race. So I think it was just some of those conversations, but really was asking myself, like, what a decision, if I wasn't worried about what other people thought, what would I do? Yeah. And where is it holding me back? And another piece of it was like, it's kind of like, for me, it was kind of like I was lying. Like when am I being out of integrity with myself? Because I'm kind of masquerading for what other people think I need to be. And for me, that was huge. And then, getting people in my life that were doing that, one of my buddies, Ryan Stewman, even Colton and you, and what I love about them is like, they're just being themselves. Right. So when they curse and swear on a podcast or whatever it is they do, they're not trying to be something. They're just being themselves. You know what I mean? So I'm like, where in my life do I just need to embrace who I am? You know what I mean? I love Jesus, but I curse a little. You know what I mean? Like, and just be who I am. You know what I mean?
So when it comes to intermittent fasting, dude, what's going on in the mind? Because like, holy crap, dude, like whenever I have a big project going on, I love to fast. Because you would think it'd be the opposite, where if you didn't have those calories feeding the brain, you wouldn't be able to focus. But the opposite is true. Like I'm more laser focused on a long-term fast, especially if I'm take some black coffee with some EMF on a long fast, dude. It's just like, boom, I'm more laser focused than at any other time. What's going on mentally that allows that to happen?
So Aaron, you can talk about this, but let me just say real quick. We talk about this in the book, but there's a chemical, it's called brain-derived neuropeptide factor. And it's essentially a chemical that's released in the brain at a certain hour after fasting. That is the chemical that is required for the neuroprotective aspects of the brain. All, like I said, the fumigation that's going on in synaptic pathways. That chemical is also responsible for what we perceive as flow state. When a person like Josh or myself or somebody like that, who's a creative content producer, all of a sudden just taps into that zone where everything is like, wow, I'm just like in the golden moment where I can just drop knowledge.
It's like you're taking the limitless pill, dude. You're just bam.
It's incredible. I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you, Aaron. I don't want to cut you off, but like yesterday, I fasted 23 and a half hours because again, I had a concussion, and I'm just like I want to make sure I'm good and everything before I travel again. And I swear to God, at like 21 hours yesterday, Josh, I felt like, it was like, I felt like Bradley Cooper and Limitless did. Yep. Like I just thought, like, Monica, I got to get home and I got to write, because we were at Costco. Get me home right now. I got to write right now.
I can't waste this window.
Go ahead, Aaron. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, the BDNF is a remarkable compound because what it's really doing is it's mimicking the effects of physical exercise without actual physical exercise. So, you'll see during physical exercise this threefold increase of BDNF, and then it's encouraging. All it's doing is just encouraging the growth and the differentiation of new synapses in certain key areas. So you have, like, you're in the zone, right? Flow state. So you're going to have your forebrain, which is going to be very dopaminergic, and then you're going to have your hippocampus activated with new neurons and synapses that are just lighting up, and these connections are going back and forth, and then your memory is triggered too, and then it'll hit your cortex, and then the connection to your mind and body will start to really. You'll actually probably notice that your retina and your eyes will probably dilate a bit. Also, your saliva will start to change. Your urine output. It's an amazing process, and it's very neuroprotective. The neurotrophins are an amazing class of receptors. I actually have to head out to a flight though, you guys.
All right, my man.
But cool, bro. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you, brother. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for coming on.
All right.
All right.
Yeah, so Josh, let's stay there for a second because Jim and I definitely spent a lot of time talking about BDNF in the book. And I really think that there's something about this, like, everyone who fasts really needs to read about BDNF. If that means read about, go on Wikipedia, Google it. But that's exactly what is allowing for flow state. So if you can create an environment, you're an entrepreneur, you're a busy cat, you really are, all about creating amazing content in your life. You really want to get this chemical, peaked in your brain as often as you can. And that's the most amazing part. This is not something like with a serotonin reuptake inhibitor or a modafinil or EMF or Adderall or any of that stuff. This is something that you can create naturally, and there's no receptor attenuation, which means that you're not going to overproduce BDNF. Like the brain is not going to overproduce BDNF. It's going to produce it when it's capable of producing it. So I think the fasted state is something that people should aspire to do at least 2 or 3 times a week. I really do.
How did 80-20 become born? Right? Was this just something that you just kept self-discovering inside your own business? Because I think we've all heard of the 80-20 rule, but you've taken it, dissected it so much more than what we've all been trained on the 80-20 rule.
Yeah. And most people are like me and which is way back when I heard about 80-20. I ran a sales report. I'm like, is this right? And I printed out the sales report and I looked at it and I got out my calculator and I went through. I'm like, I'll be darned. Like, that's right. Yeah. 20% of these customers, this top 20% are doing 80% of the sales and the rest of them are just, peanuts. And well, then that was it. Like, I thought that was it. Well, it's not. It's only the tip of the iceberg. And so here's what happened. I mentioned Richard Koch earlier with his Star Principle book. Well, his most famous book is called The 80-20 Principle. And Ken McCarthy, the guy who ran that seminar, he said, hey, everybody, you've got to read this book by Richard Koch. And I read that book. And well, I'm sitting in the coffee shop. I get to page 14 and he makes this offhand remark about chaos and chaos theory and fractals. And the 80-20 has something to do with those. And then he kind of goes on and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I had studied that stuff before. There's a whole science called chaos theory, and it has to do with how do cracks grow across your windshield when the rock hits your window, and how do avalanches form, and why do sand dunes form the way they do, and why do rivers form the way they do. And the thing about all of that stuff is it has self-similar patterns, which are called fractals. So for example, I'm looking out my window right now and there's a tree. Well, I could zoom in and the tree branch pattern is true of every big branch on the tree. It's true of every little branch. It's true of every leaf and twig. In fact, I can zoom all the way. I could get a microscope and can look at the cells, and there's veins feeding the cells, right? So on every scale, you got this branching pattern, okay? Well, what I suddenly realized reading Rich's book is, hey, wait a minute. If he's right, that means there's an 80-20 inside every 80-20. And another one, and another one, and another one. Oh, my word. And it also means this is going to be everywhere, like everywhere. And I jumped up and I went home and I got out my sales reports for my business and my traffic reports. And I got out my calculator and I started looking off. I'm like, oh, my word. 80-20 is everywhere. Like it's almost like looking out the window and seeing green, right? Oh, there's grass, there's trees, there's a bush. Yeah, there's 80-20. In fact, the grass is 80-20, the bush is 80-20, the trees are 80-20, the traffic and the roads is 80-20, the carpet in my house is 80-20, the channels on my TV are 80-20. It's all 80-20. Every spreadsheet in my whole business, the Google impressions, the Google clicks, the Google conversions, it's 80-20 everywhere. And like my brain almost exploded. I mean, it almost got pieces all over the place. All right. And I said, wait, so what's the math of this thing? And I couldn't. Now I'm an engineer and I'm a geek and a half, dude. I mean, I am a geek's geek. I mean, just to give you how much of a geek I am, So my original engineering job, I was an acoustical engineer designing speakers. I was designing the speakers in the 96 Honda Civic, for example. Okay, that's what I was doing. Well, last weekend I was in Dayton, Ohio at a speaker building competition. And all these guys, they built all these crazy audio systems, and they all brought them to Ohio. And the most common thing that anybody ever said to me was, man, you can't find other people like this anywhere, only here. So like they all come there just because it's the only place where they can meet other, it's like going 6,000 feet deep in the ocean, and there are these strange creatures like you never see on the surface. It was like that, right? That's how much of a geek I am, okay? And I was like, wait, this is a calculus formula. And I eventually figured out the calculus formula. And you don't have to know calculus to do it. I just had to figure out how to do it. And so I have a whole website connected with my 80/20 book. It's at 80curve.com, 8020curve.com, where you can plug in numbers, and so I'll give you an example of what you can figure out. So 80/20 gives you the ability to predict the future. It gives you the ability to know a few little things and extrapolate it to a whole bunch of things and know that you're going to be correct. Okay. So for example, let's say that you own a Starbucks and you have 1,000 people a week come and buy a latte for $5. Well, 80/20 says that for every 1,000 people that'll buy a $5 latte, one of them will spend $2,700 on an espresso machine. So for every $5,000 of lattes, we're moving one $2,700 espresso machine. That actually is about correct. Okay. And you'll move like 10 $250 espresso machines. Okay. And there's a pricing curve, and it says, look, for every person who's got a $5 hole burning itself in their wallet, there's some percentage of people that have a $500 hole or a $5,000 hole or a $50,000 hole. It's scary how accurate this is. And so you can use it on your time. You can use it on your spreadsheets. You can use it on your profit and loss. You can use it on your best customers. You can use it on your worst customers or your warranty returns. It goes all over the place. No one had ever extrapolated this. And so this was about the same time that the Google AdWords was starting to happen, okay? And so 80/20 was my secret weapon. And in fact, 80/20 was a huge shortcut to really figuring out Google AdWords. Like I kind of had it figured out, but once I realized, hey, dude, here's your job is to like go through every one of those columns, sort it, and do an 80/20. Sort by this column, do an 80/20. Is actually usually do an 80/20 twice. Like don't just do the top 20%. Do the top 20% of the top 20%. Get that optimized. You can ignore most of it, but get that one part optimized. Next. And all of a sudden, it all started converging and aligning. And so this went on for years. And I would teach it to my best students, is what I would do. When people would come into my advanced courses and they want to learn like serious AdWords stuff or serious whatever, I would start teaching them 80/20. And eventually it was like, well, if I wrote a book about this, like, would people actually like it and accept it, or would they just think it's too geeky? Well, 80/20 sales and marketing has really turned into a cult classic, and there's a whole bunch of propeller heads out there, or maybe even regular entrepreneurs who are like, man, this 80/20 thing is really powerful, and I see it everywhere, just like Perry originally did. I can't escape from it. It's out my window. It's in all my spreadsheets. And so, and that's really satisfying. I mean, I love it when the light turns on. It is so powerful.
So to give those that are watching and listening an idea, right? Because I mean, you've only been, it sounds to me, really intentional with this for about the last 4 months.
Yeah.
What type of business has just social media? Because you're not buying ads or paying for ads. It doesn't sound like you're just being very intentional with your posting and how you post. What kind of business has this generated in the first few months that you've been hardcore with this strategy?
Yeah, so in the first few months, it's given me almost exactly to a T 50% of my business, whether it be through referrals on people who see me on there, or from people who see me on there and want to work with me directly. And the response has been amazing. And for example, I had someone the other day who wants to list a high-end home, and they could go to anyone. They could go to the person who has 100 bus benches. They could go to someone they know, one of the big names. But what they said is they reached out to me and said, "Hey, Mike, I want to reach out to you and I want to work with you because I want someone to hustle as hard as you do every day to sell my home." Because they see me, man. I get up at 4 every day and I'll post a snap of me driving to the gym. I answer all of my emails between 4 and 4:30 in the morning. And that drives crazy results because people are like, "Man, what are you doing up at that time?" I'm like, "I'm out here trying to work to get the job done for you." So it does amazing results because people can get a taste for the real you on there. And that's another thing that I want to preach to all those who want to start leveraging social media, especially Instagram, is find your niche, find your path. Whether you're the person with a parrot and you want to be the person with a bird on your shoulder in every picture, find a way to separate yourself, but do it in a way that's transparent and honest. Because I see so many people that try and copy what others are doing, and that's great and all for certain things. But people like to follow you when they know that you're doing something different and it's a bit exciting, right? So that's what happened with me in the cars. And my advice to everyone out there, if you have a passion, try and tap into that and leverage it, whether it be pets or certain vacations, anything, your kids. Leverage that to the fullest, because there's always going to be a community out there that can relate to that. And when they see that they can meet you on a common ground from day one, and you guys have something outside of business to talk about, that breaks huge barriers and is such a big icebreaker to start off the ground strongly with.